Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Xiong. According to a newly published report by risk consultancy Verisk Maplecroft, China is diversifying its supply of critical natural resources. This is a move that will shore up Beijing's ability to weaponize trade against its geopolitical rivals. China is a large consumer of major commodities including crude oil and iron ore, but the country relies heavily on imports to meet its domestic demand for those commodities. One way China is diversifying its import sources is by buying stakes in overseas companies, said Verisk Maplecroft. Doing that will increase the proportion of Chinese-owned resources in the country's total imports, the report said. As an example, the consultancy said the number of Chinese-owned base metals and gold companies in Oceania rose from 0 in the year 2000 to 59 last year. It represented around 22.6% of total foreign ownership in such companies, the report showed. Oceania is a region that includes Australia, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, Fiji, and numerous island nations. China is seeking to strengthen its control over global supply chains via overseas investments and partnerships with international majors. Beijing has been supporting Chinese state-owned enterprises to go global and establish control of resource bases overseas since the late 1990s, said the report. China imports critical commodities such as crude oil, natural gas, metallurgical coal, and iron ore from a highly concentrated group of trading partners, said Verisk Maplecroft. In diversifying its import sources, China prefers suppliers from stable autocratic regimes to democracies that may involve frequent changes in governments or potential shifts in policy, it added. Our data shows China is pivoting towards more autocratic regimes that represent greater stability for its supply lines than democracies that are or may become hostile to Beijing. But it is also using its massive market as a source of diplomatic leverage, the consultancy said. By securing diversified sources, China will be in a better position to weaponize trade with geopolitical rivals, while at the same time increasing the economic dependence of new and existing partners, it said. But democratic countries dominate the production of some resources. One of them is iron ore. China's largest supplier of iron ore last year was Australia, an American ally that was recently hit by Beijing's trade restrictions. Australia shipped a monthly average of 61 million tons of iron ore to China in 2020, accounting for more than 60% of overall Chinese imports of the commodity. That's why China has been strengthening trade ties with other iron ore producers such as Brazil and Guinea. Despite a tougher line on Beijing under President Bolsonaro, Brazil remains a priority in China's diversification strategy, while Guinea is politically well disposed to Beijing amid democratic backslide, the report said. According to research firm Capital Economics, China is by far Australia's largest trading partner in goods and services, accounting for 39.4% of goods exports and 17.6% of services exports between 2019 and 2020. Beijing has shown that it's willing to use trade as a geopolitical lever. The report cited the example of China banning Australian coal. Relations between the two countries soured after Australia supported a call for an international inquiry into China's handling of the COVID-19 outbreak, which first emerged in the city of Wuhan. Coal was just one of the Australian exports hit by Chinese retaliatory measures that ranged from tariffs to bans and restrictions. Companies and investors are in the direct sights of Beijing's diplomatic moves and will need to prepare accordingly. Such geopolitical tensions could persist as China speeds up its effort to reduce its reliance on unfriendly resource supplies. Banning imports of coal from Australia was a prime example, but more are likely to follow, with significant impacts on the trade in global commodities and the geopolitical landscape likely, the report said. In 2010, after a Norwegian committee awarded the Nobel Peace Prize to an advocate of constitutional government inside China, the party cut off imports of Norwegian salmon for 7 years. The incident was notable in part because the Nobel Committee that made the decision is not a government body. Norwegian governments and businesses were punished for something they did not control. This form of collective punishment is a common feature of the Chinese Communist Party's attacks on its so-called enemies and is designed to encourage collective self-censorship. Since then, countries and companies that have contravened the party's line have routinely found themselves on the wrong end of such tactics. In November 2019, for example, Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey retweeted a single tweet expressing support for Hong Kong's pro-democracy protest movement. The resulting firestorm put the NBA's business in China on edge. NBA games were dropped from state television, NBA merchandise was taken down from online stores, and the Chinese government reportedly demanded that the league fire Morey. Even though the furor has since died down, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver estimated the economic damage to the league is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Although the NBA defended Morey's right to free speech, China's message still appears to have received. Since the controversy, no NBA players, owners, or officials have made any public statements in support of Hong Kong protesters. As in many other such incidents, the party paid a short-term public relations cost for its coercive tactics, but appears to have successfully communicated to a powerful target the long-term costs of political non-compliance. Governments and companies around the world now know that if they step too far out of the line, the CCP will hit them where it hurts, their bottom line. Silence and deference, on the other hand, will be rewarded. Some members of the Trump as well as the current US administration have pushed hard for economic decoupling from the Chinese economy, in an effort to deny the party the sway in other countries' political systems that comes along with growing economic might. Decoupling remains hugely controversial and would undoubtedly be hugely costly if executed as envisioned by the more hawkish elements of the administration. But those pushing for decoupling live in a more realistic world than those who would advocate a return to the status quo ante, in that they at least attempt to grapple with the geopolitical implications of an authoritarian party intent on using globalization to power its continued rise. Policy makers across the democratic world who want to secure the blessing of liberty and the benefit of global economic integration need to start working together to offer a middle way. The UK government's proposal for a club of 10 democracies that would develop alternatives to Huawei 5G is a promising start. But even those measures don't begin to embrace the depth of the challenge Beijing poses. To defend the best parts of the system we call globalization, the parts that uphold human dignity by enabling humanity's capacity for creativity and the collaboration to flower, democratic countries will have to band together in a cooperative effort that cuts across government, business, academia, science, and technology. The sooner that this shared project can begin, the better. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly.